Hello and welcome to Indo Politics. This week the government announced a multi-million euro fuel support scheme for hauliers, farmers, fishers, contractors and tourism operators. Cabinet divisions have delayed the short-term let register until after the peak summer season. The former Fianna Fáil TD Jim Glennon faced a backlash after admitting he naively produced a character reference for a convicted sex offender. And the by-election is heating up in Dublin and Galway. Today on Indo Politics, I'm joined by professional Cork hurling fan Maeve McTaggart, who's also the news and political reporter with the Irish Independent. Maeve, you're one of these Cork people who has drunk the Kool-Aid that you've already won the All-Ireland and it's only April.
Yes.
Micheál Martin, you were telling me, was sending out kind of signals about along these lines as well this week.
Maybe subliminal messages. I think maybe as a Cork person, maybe I was the only one to notice this on Tuesday morning. Micheál Martin walked into Cabinet with a nice red notebook like this one with the Cork logo on the cover. So maybe it's a good sign.
It's a sign that he's
sign.
Fully bought in. That is a Sunday World notebook, by the way. It is not a Cork hurling notebook as well. Like, yeah, it's probably the worst job of being the Taoiseach to be sitting beside the President of the GAA and the President of Ireland when another county has just beaten your county. And Kenny had to do it a number of times, as Taoiseach Micheál's had to do it last year. Bertie Ahern remarkably went 11 years as Taoiseach and the Dubs didn't win in All-Ireland while he was there. So Micheál will be hoping this time he doesn't have to sit there smiling while really dying on the inside.
Particularly after last year. Last year was a painful one, I think, for sure.
Tipperary being the old enemy and so on.
It's distant now.
So that'll keep Micheál around anyway and busy for the summer if he doesn't have anything else going on. Talk to me about energy credits and the energy package this week. It's kind of weird that they've announced this package after the fuel protest. They had the previous package, and already they're kind of flagging, there's going to be more to come. Is that to kind of stave off pressure, or what's the tactic there?
It was interesting. There seemed to be a bit of confusion this week, I think, in general, for maybe people who don't so closely follow politics as to why we were getting an announcement of a fuel support package. The opposition really accused the government of really re-announcing the package that they had confirmed 2 weeks ago after these fuel protests. And I think, look, there are really so many kites being flown at this point that I think they're getting a bit tangled.
By the Minister for Finance.
By the Minister for Finance. There's just so much in the air. I think there's a real lack of coherency around what to do, when to do it, how to do it, why to do it. And this is, we'll talk about the short-term lets in a second, but it's just a real lack of coherency really kind of across the board on quite a number of issues. And particularly around fuel supports and responding to the cost of living crisis. Simon Harris last weekend kind of floated the idea. He said he did more than float, but he put forward some ideas where he said his officials were looking at measures around maybe electric vehicles and heat pumps and kind of helping people to upgrade their home heating systems. Darragh O'Brien later said, he's already really put forward some home heating supports. He was asked on Tuesday, I believe, did he feel under pressure by the finance minister really coming in and pushing these ideas? And he said, Neelam Fui Brew, he's not under any pressure, and he doesn't feel like he's under any pressure. But it just really points to this, again, lack of coherence, particularly as we're coming towards now another summer where further kites will be flown.
Yeah, because already we now know that the October budget is most likely going to have energy credits in there, assuming the Iran situation continues. We're going to have the Simon Harris SSIA spin scheme. We're going to, there was a childcare package spoken about this week. He's already promised income tax cuts. We're only in April. Like, we're 6 months away from this budget, and there seems to be a strange pattern building up that every time Fine Gael get a bad poll, Simon Harris announces something the following day, or it's floated out there.
And particularly things that are quite costly. I haven't done the maths for all of these measures, but on Tuesday on his way into Cabinet, Simon Harris was saying that, look, we can't just be doing a budget every week like the opposition are calling for. You have Labour and Sinn Féin saying, we need immediate and urgent action for families that are now struggling. On Tuesday, Simon Harris was also saying that as we come into the winter, any energy crisis is only going to sharpen as we come into the winter months, and he said there's a need to kind of keep our powder dry, and refused to really rule out any one-off measures like we've seen previously. You know, the opposition, meanwhile, I asked the finance spokesperson for Labour, Jed Nash, this, because he's really advocating for this kind of sense of a mini budget, which has already been ruled out. And Deputy Nash really said, you know, look, now is the time that the public has seen in the aftermath of the fuel crisis and the fuel protests, seen the kind of those representative groups, the lobby groups doing the business for the agricultural sector. In the last budget, you know, in the same sense, he said we've seen the lobbyists do the business for the hospitality sector, and people really now need to see the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach and the rest of government kind of do the business for the people. And people are wondering, you know, at what point is enough and what level is enough, and that's the question.
Looking at the package today, and okay, we had the two packages and they're all combined into one.
Yeah.
They're going to have to do something else before the summer break anyway, because the current excise duty announcements, they only go to end of July. So before that all breaks up, there's going to have to be another announcement. Either they roll over those existing measures, and then they'll come under pressure to, well, what else are you doing? So this is going to continue to be a stick they will be beaten with.
And there's a real sense of deja vu about it as well. You know, in the weeks even before the fuel crisis, the government was saying they're ruling nothing out. Yeah. They're keeping all their options open. Everything's under review. We hear that many, many times. And particularly, it seems to, and you would hope maybe that they would learn their lesson from the weeks before the fuel protests, where they said that they had actually been already looking at a second package the whole time. That didn't actually trickle through to people. You would hope that just the communication is there at this point. Because these groups, and it's interesting, you're seeing it now in the by-elections, particularly in Galway West, these fuel protests do seem to be helping to kind of blossom some people's candidacy in Galway West, that this isn't going away, and you would wonder if there isn't action taken, if people seem to come under more pressure during the summer months, what's to say that there wouldn't be more protests, more pushback? People really seem to be coming to the end of their string, and a lot of measures, particularly on home heating oil, as you're looking at, you know, the excise duty again, the carbon tax has been kicked back again, the increase in the carbon tax, but you know, it's a pushing back of these conversations rather than a resolving of them. Yeah,
the carbon tax is going to be interesting now, because once you admit a weakness on a proposal and you say, oh, we can afford to defer it, it's hard to bring it back then. And the Sinn Féin position seems to have shifted now from where previously they were calling for it to be deferred. They were constantly, you know, Pierce Doherty was saying, oh, you can't bring that in, you can't bring it in. But now they're just saying there shouldn't be a carbon tax, full stop.
Particularly when you see there's this real public awareness of how much money is in the bank in this rainy day fund. You know, even coming up to these by-elections now as well, I've heard a couple of candidates reference the Apple tax money. Yeah. There's this wider awareness in the public and in the opposition that we have all this money in this rainy day fund. People are already saying it's raining. I know Michael Healy-Rae.
That's Michael Healy-Rae, yeah.
But not to quote Kerry Man, but people are really looking at all of this money, wondering where it's going to go. I think people, particularly looking after the last budget, where such a huge proportion of that package was dedicated to reducing the VAT. I think people sense, people are reluctant, I think, to hedge their bets on this next budget, particularly after there was a little bit of disappointment in the last one with the lack of, you know, indexing the tax bands. All of this are wondering whether October will do the business. Okay, so
the way it's been talked up at the moment, though, it's going to be a bumper absolute bonanza of a budget, the way things are going at the moment. You spoke about that coherence, control, lack of communication. Explain something to me. Where can I or can I not this summer rent out a house if I own it, depending upon the population of the particular town and who I have to register it? Where's all that at?
This is another, I think, conversation. There's a lot of deja vu around this, I think, as well. This short-term letting register, it has been mooted really for a number of years. And there was really some pushback at a European level a few years ago. But once James Brown came in as housing minister, he seemed to really want to pull this lever in his own language. The point of the register is that anyone who's operating kind of an Airbnb style short-term let would have to first register the property with Fáilte Ireland as a short-term let if it's being rented for a certain period of time in the year, and also have the adequate planning permissions to do this. And the point of this is so that hopefully some of these properties will be able to return to the long-term rental market. There was already quite a row, so to say, in government around some of the details of this. In the end, they settled on the fact that this would only apply to towns with a population of more than 20,000.
This was the Killarney rule.
The Killarney rule.
Yeah. It basically, the reason it was being called that was because it would mean Tralee would be caught because it's such a big town, but Killarney would come under the limit, and it's such an important tourist town. So that was, why it was labelled that. So you basically saw if you have a town of more than 20, you simply can't do short-term lets, or you just have to register, or what is the rule?
You have to follow these new rules around the planning permissions and the register. So exactly that, in the whole county of Kerry, who relies quite heavily in a lot of the tourist areas on these short-term lets, only Tralee falls under these new rules. In Galway, it's only Galway City that falls under these new rules. So it really seemed to take the teeth out of it in many ways. Again, kind of seen as a bit of a success of former Junior Minister Michael Healy-Rae. But
Norma Foley would disagree.
And Norma Foley.
She was.
And this week, this register that's supposed to be available now by the 20th of May, there are now question marks over whether or not it will actually be ready.
Yeah, the argument seems to be, we don't want to do the register until we have the planning guidelines ready, so people are quite clear where they stand. But you're kind of going, well, how long does this stuff take? Why did you announce it if it wasn't going to be ready?
Yes, and it's a row that Taoiseach Simon Harris on Tuesday denied was ever a row, and they're just teasing some things out. But really, I think the argument with this is how long of a conversation has this been? I remember at a doorstep with James Brown back in February. I went back over to find the date. He said at that stage when I suppose these people who run some of the short-term lets, some of these Airbnb style properties across the country, were kind of raising concerns that this legislation would have unintended consequences on these rural economies. He said that, look, no one can be surprised that this is coming. And that it has been flagged by himself, by Enterprise Minister Peter Burke, by Darragh O'Brien before him. He said that no one can be surprised. It seems that now this time is creeping, and we saw this similarly with the new rental rules that were introduced a few months ago. The opposition were asking, where is this legislation? And it seemed to, again, kind of be this fast-tracking, which I don't think particularly the opposition enjoy. They don't enjoy not being able to debate this and be able to, I suppose, put their 2 cents onto this. So we have this now again where there are questions around, I think I can... From Simon Harris's discussion on Tuesday, he was kind of saying that there's a teasing out to do maybe on the planning side and on the bureaucracy of the planning of it all, because at the same time as they are cutting red tape around the planning for modular homes, he said it would be ironic if then we were introducing further kind of bureaucracy around these short-term lets.
Yeah, it's very messy, the notion that I saw the Taoiseach a couple of months back talking to Michael Cahill of Fianna Fáil and Danny Healy-Rae, who was then in government, about an amnesty, about the idea that if you were in this position where you were letting out a house and over it had been going on for many years, you wouldn't have to now retrospectively apply for permission and so on if you could prove that it had been used in that way. So all this stuff kind of seems to be up in the air. It has just thrown up issues.
And it's expected that there will be a lead-in time for people to be able to, I suppose, get their house in order. Pardon the pun, But it does seem, again, this kind of lack of coherency. I think, Simon Harris said...
Yes, there's a housing emergency.
Yes.
It's not a housing emergency in 12 months' time. It's now,
Yes, and, there's one side of this with the Department of Housing who want to return these properties to long-term use. There's another side with the Department of Enterprise where they don't want to hurt the tourism sector. And in between, Simon Harris denied that there's a row going on at all. But he said that this is government doing what government does. I'm not sure really if you want to be attached to that. What does government do is the question. Of, does government bring in the legislation in a timely manner? Or does government, I suppose, need to, once again, I suppose, sit down and parse through this legislation that we had already planned to come into effect on the 20th of May. I think that date now is a bit up in the air, but whether it will come in before this tourist season.
We're in tourist season. Like Easter is regarded as the traditional start of the tourist season. This is the first bank holiday weekend of the summer. Like it's underway. So it's not as if this is going to, we got in for the tourist season, it's here. That's it, simple as that. So we're possibly looking until next year then for this to be introduced.
I think government said that really they would want to make progress on this as quickly as possible. I think it remains to be seen what the deadline on as quickly as possible is, whether it'll be at some point this summer,
as you say,
into
it's
September.
Another issue that's just dragging, that they just can't get, just announce something, do it, implement it. Yeah. We've had a lot of coverage and a lot of discussion over the last week about character reference from politicians for people involved in criminal activity. And in this case, it was the former Fianna Fáil TD, Jim Glennon, providing a character reference to a sex offender, and not coming out because a judge said these were vile acts and there was no reference to the victim, was merely about the good character, the previous good character of the perpetrator. A lot of talk then about, oh, well, politicians or TDs or former TDs shouldn't be providing character references, and what role does character references have? Did you get any sense this week, amid all the talk about it, that anybody proposing any actual change here to what's actually in place?
It does at least seem to have, I think, re-sparked a conversation around this practice of character references. You know, the Taoiseach, I suppose, didn't go so far this week as to saying there needs to be explicit rule changes, but he said that he's always disagreed with this as a concept, and that TDs and senators should really refrain from doing it at all. Similarly, you know, in opposition parties, Sinn Féin, finance spokesperson Pierce Doherty said during the week that Sinn Féin has long had a policy in place. He couldn't say for how long, but that they've had a policy in place where it's TDs and senators do not provide character references in these cases. You have, you know, Aontú leader Peadar Tobin would now like all of these parties to audit whether their own parliamentary party have ever provided character references to, in any sort of real criminal case, but particularly for the more serious crimes, such as this one. Yeah,
you'd have to say 10 days ago, when we didn't know it was a former TD, and we thought it was the parties weren't all so confident that it wasn't one of theirs, actually, that was popping up in this case, when we didn't know what the status of the politician was, or indeed who it was. So let's leave that one on a watching brief, because that's another one. We often get these stories that crop up, big public debate on it. Politicians say, hoo-ha, somebody should do something about it, and then it just kind of drifts. So we'll see where that goes into the future. You mentioned the by-elections, this weekend being the deadline for nominations. We're pretty clear on the runners and riders now at this stage. Are you getting the sense that the tension is building up?
I think for observers of these elections, I think that there's definitely a kind of level of excitement about it. It kind of has become this conversation point now where people are really trying to get their bets in and trying to predict. You know, a lot of the conversation is around how people really can't predict where this is going to go with any real certainty. You know, just before we came in, I was checking really who's on the ballot in each of the constituencies, and it does seem to be as we expected. There's potentially going to be a couple of more unknowns in the kind of to the public,
but no big. West, there's no sign of any big parachute candidates coming in or anywhere like.
Not yet, not yet. We still have a few hours to go, but not yet. And you know, particularly in Dublin Central, it kind of seems to be this kind of blockbuster. But similarly in Galway West, I think it's not making as much headlines because it is a lot more uncertain, particularly in the space that Catherine Connolly left, where there's space for this independent, left-wing type of candidate. You know, we have quite a few who would fit that bill, particularly quite a few left-wing candidates in the opposition parties that would fit that bill. And it really remains to be seen, you know, where things go, how things really shape up. Because particularly, you know, normally when you have a general election, you have the scrutiny is really spread out. But now as you look at these by-elections, we might have maybe 20 people, if even, where, you know, the eyes of the nation and the eyes of the nation's political correspondents are also on just these 15 to 20 people, and I imagine it really might ramp up the pressure as we get into it.
They're very interesting by-elections because in both cases the vacancies have been created by people going on to bigger and better things. There's no sympathy vote factored in because nobody has passed away or had to retire on medical grounds or anything like that. a signal of the fragmentation that we're in as well is that they are so open. I mean, in the past, I can go back to your own hometown of Cork has had such significant by-elections over the years, and in 79 brought down Jack Lynch as Taoiseach because Fianna Fáil lost 2 by-elections. I was in Cork in 94, double by-election, which kind of brought the end of the Fianna Fáil Labour government at the time. It changed the arithmetic and meant that another government, the Rainbow, was possible. So there can be significance to double by-elections. But if you look at those occasions, it was kind of clear who the runners and riders were and who was the strong person on the government side. And in both of these by-elections as well, you'd have to say, nobody's putting any money on a government candidate winning, full stop.
No, definitely not. I think...
And that's not just down to the tradition of, governments don't win by-elections. We're not. It's just not happening.
No, I think it would... the real surprise in this election, I think, unfortunately for the government candidates, but it would be, the real surprise would be if a government candidate does win these by-elections. I think the real conversation comes down to...
They even come in the top 2, they'd be doing well.
Yes, definitely. It really comes down to... what it means maybe for Sinn Féin, particularly if Janice Boylan doesn't win in Dublin Central, what it means if a Social Democrat candidate wins in Dublin Central, is that a sign of what's to come for Holly Cairns and her party? Similarly, in Galway West, we're looking at will the fuel protests wave be ridden by Noel Thomas, and how does that pan out? But the conversations really don't seem to be what will the impact be on Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael or the government parties. It'll be significant in Dublin Central because if a government candidate doesn't win, for the first time in a long time, there will be no government TD.
Full stop.
Full stop in a very significant constituency. Obviously simultaneously as well, you have a significant constituency
that has created such substantial figures over the years, going back to George Colley, to Bertie Ahern, to Pascal Downey. There's always been a big government beast in that constituency, and there won't be now. Absolutely,
and you're also looking then as well at what it signals for John Stevens, who himself campaigned quite a while ago for Bertie Ahern.
The return of the Drumcondra Mafia.
Yeah, you could say, will it be, or will it also be if Janet Horner from the Green Party does it? Will that signal some sort of return for that party? So the conversation...
But the way you're teasing it up there is we'll be looking at the government parties in terms of their performance. Can they, what sort of numbers do they get? But ultimately not in terms of a win. But it's really on the opposition side, we're trying to see what way are people going in terms of what's their inkling of what side of the opposition that they're actually moving towards.
And particularly then you also have this simultaneous plotline of how Jerry Hutch is going to do after the previous election. Where will he place? How will he do on transfers? That's another simultaneous conversation happening about how he will perform.
Meanwhile, the curse of the Fianna Fáil campaign seems to be kicking in yet again. So they have... Somebody in Fianna Fáil decided it would be a good idea to put out a background briefing note for the national media around Killian Keane, who is their candidate. And in the middle of it, it says his broader message is that he wants to be an independent-minded government TD. Bit of a misnomer there, you'd have to say, who can deliver for Galway and push government when Galway is being shortchanged. He is consciously trying to position himself less as an unwavering party standard bearer and more as a Galway advocate with access to government. So they're basically trying to create a kind of a Healy-Rae type rebel independent inside in government, but actually this is the official pitch. Is this just a panic because they're worried that Noel Thomas in Independent Ireland is stealing the Fianna Fáil vote?
Well, potentially you can see that a pitch like this, if it's going to perform well anywhere, it would perform well in this constituency at this time, particularly after the fuel protests.
You would wonder... credible though that a Fianna Fáil candidate can do that?
You can say all you want, I think, in the campaign, but it comes to how you then deliver in a party whip system. You can't be an independent... And
you
also,
can't be an independently minded government TD, as the Healy-Raes have just found out.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a case study really in how that goes, particularly as you look at, in the context of these by-elections, there's so much that government is contending with and will definitely be facing on the doors in terms of cost of living, in terms of housing, you know, is this credible that a government candidate can say, I'm going to go in and I'll be independent and I will sort all this out? You know, you're not sure, but I think also in these by-elections, to add to the list of things that we're looking at for a future date, you know, Killian is the youngest candidate. I think in these by-elections he's only 25. So there's a lot of what's happening here is a shaping up, I think, for the next round of elections, and you can see that maybe in a couple of the parties with the candidates that they're putting forward. So you wonder, is this even a signal of how Fianna Fáil are maybe going to adapt their pitch?
Yeah, hard to do that though. You're either government or you're not. You know, it's hard to come out after 5 years in government and go, oh, I'm going to go in there and show them what to do. The answer back is that you raise a valid point there. By-elections are great for positioning yourself into the future. It's a point that Pascal Donoghue made. He ran in the Dublin Central by-election after the late Tony Gregory died 20 years ago, and he openly admits he knew he was going to get slaughtered and he wasn't going to be anywhere. But he just said, look, this is politics. There's an election in your area, you run for it. Simple as that. So, yeah, Killian Keane, you know, it's his first, he's a councillor now. This is his first election, but obviously he's trying to position himself to be a general election candidate as well.
Particularly going forward, you know, in Galway West as well, you know, you have another contender, I suppose, is kind of seen as, you know, a bit of a protege maybe of Noel Grealish. You know, are we going down this route? Particularly, you know, another independent has just made it into the Oris in Galway West. You know, they really seem to favour these
very independent minds. Yeah.
So maybe that's the way to go.
You're more mainstream in Cork. You tend to stick with your Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, your football or your hurling. Maeve, thanks very much for all of that. Thank you for watching. For the latest episodes of Indo Politics, subscribe to the Irish Independent YouTube channel, or you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next week.